Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Forge. Whether you're sitting at your desk, driving to work, or you're in some other far-off corner of the old world, this is SquareHammer.
Yeah, it is.
Mate, that is as Foster's as I could make it. We got, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but we've got down here, there's this ad for Foster's, and it's like, yeah, this real Australian guy with a deep voice, and it sounds Foster's as, but it was crossed a little bit with the Solo ad. Solo's like a lemon fizzy drink, like lemon squash, and it was really popular down here in the 80s and 90s. And the guy, funnily enough, the guy that was in the Solo ad has now been locked up for running drugs in Southeast Asia, but that's beside the point.
You guys do some weird stuff down in Australia. You know that?
It just comes with being descendants of a lot of criminals. It's good fun. It's good fun. How you been, Kyle?
I've been good, man. I've been good. Trying to avoid coronavirus, and it's
yes, you'll be pretty light on your feet.
Yeah, it's the end of winter over here, so spring's right around the corner.
We're coming into winter, so this is going to be like corona breeding season. Having said that, like most Tasmanians are quite standoffish and kind of keep themselves anyway. Like we're a very small state, but we don't really congregate anywhere much. We kind of it's like that old kind of American Midwest back in the 50s and 60s. Like it's like, hey John, hey Hank, and that was it. You know, it's pretty much like that here. So we're like, g'day Trev, g'day Baz, and then you kind of go your separate way. So I don't think corona will penetrate too far into Tassie. I could be wrong. We could all be dead by the end of winter, but I reckon we'll be all right.
Well, I'll say two things about that. As a miniature wargamer, that probably is good for you.
Yeah.
It just means that you get to sit down and paint your high elves.
Exactly.
Without fear of going out for food, water, or convenience store purchases.
Or toilet paper.
Or toilet paper. The second thing is maybe we need to start a prayers for Tasmania or prayers for Australia hashtag and get that trending on social media.
Not just and instead of sending prayers, guys, can you send toilet paper? I don't know if any of you guys have been looking at the news recently, but there are literal, honest to God, riots happening here in Australia right now over toilet paper. A dude was tased. I'm not kidding you. A cop turned up and used a taser on a bloke who was trying to fight for toilet paper. It was insane.
Now, so what is the shortage of toilet paper caused by?
The whole coronavirus thing, like it's queer as, man. It's queer as. So apparently, when the first coronavirus infection happened here in Australia, for some reason, and I don't really understand it, for some reason, people just started stocking up on toilet paper, and now it's become a cultural thing. It's becoming like America's got your gun culture, Second Amendment, right to bear arms. For some reason, somehow, we've had our First Amendment, and the First Amendment is right to own and hoard toilet paper. And people are literally breaking out into fights in these shops, like guys getting king hit from behind over a 12-pack of sorbet. I don't understand it. I don't get it, Kyle. It's bad. If you're me, okay, so be me, right? I'm not worried about toilet paper because I'm a normal person. I'll wipe with a moistened face washer. I'll take it to the cold tap. I'll wash it off and leave it for the next person.
Oh, like you're so thoughtful.
You know, like a normal person. Why all the toilet paper worries? I don't get it.
Did I see correctly that a newspaper started circulating extra paper with their, paper newspapers to be used as toilet paper? That actually happened?
Yes. So the Australian, it's circulating blank pages to be used in lieu of toilet paper, in lieu of toilet paper, so that the people, the readers of the Australian, don't have to worry about going out and fighting for toilet paper, which I thought was very thoughtful.
I think it's a money grab.
Good
Who
in
buys
Australia.
a newspaper anymore?
We'll see old people, Kyle, old people. Because what happened was, right, there was this elderly gent, and he was in this. You get those visions of tumbleweeds like getting blown across the Navajo desert or whatever the hell it is in America. Well, down this aisle in Coles, in one of our shopping places, like Coles, there was no TP at all, but there was this lonely little section of snot rags. What do you call them? Tissues. There's a lonely little section of tissues, right? And he's this bent over, hunched over old man, stacking his trolley with tissues because he didn't have any toilet paper. Now, thankfully, one of the women who had walked up and shanked another woman for her toilet paper felt bad for the old man, ended up giving him one or two rolls, right, which was lovely of her. But the fact is, the old man now goes and buys the Australian, and he can wipe with paper, newspaper. How good is that?
Uh-huh.
There you go. That's why. It's all good. And see, over here in Australia, a lot of the older blokes, not so much me, because I'm a phone user when I'm on the toilet. I don't know about you, but I get there and scroll my phone. If we did like a bacterial wipe of my phone, I'd hate to see what it came up with. Probably some new types of fecal excretions. I'm not sure, but it wouldn't be nice, right? It wouldn't be nice. You'd probably get syphilis just looking at my phone. But old people over here, they get the big huge paper, right, like the Australian or the Guardian or whatever, and they'll read that on the dunny, and that's generally how they do it. That's how they read their paper.
Oh, but I learned more about Australia in the last 5 minutes than the other year and a half that you and I have known each other.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and we got demographics, age demographics too.
That's a good insight into Australian culture right there.
Yes, and it is a cultural thing too. It is cultural. Good.
Yeah, Gee.
We love it. So yes, anyway, back to what we were talking about. Please, guys, with the thoughts and prayers, couple of rolls of loo paper for me and mine would be fantastic.
I'll have to ship you some from America.
Thanks, mate. 2-ply if you can. Is what I'll do.
Whoa. Beggars can't be choosers, all right?
I was going to say, if it's 2-ply, I'll tear it apart so I get 4 rolls.
I don't skimp, man. I only buy 3-ply.
Oh, really? Oh, my God. You haven't got 6 kids, have you?
No, I don't.
I'll get 3. I'll get 3 rolls price of 1.
I don't have any kids, so when I wipe, I want it to feel like magic. I want to feel like I'm wiping with a piece of velvet or something.
Wiping with the skin of an angel.
So, all right, what are we talking about for real today? What are we talking about?
Well, tell you what, we're not going to talk about wiping with the skin of an angel because that would be blasphemous. So let's get right away from that. Right, on the show today, topics for today is me having a very long Christmas break. I think I ended up with 3 months, which was pretty cool. Going back to painting after that break and things that I learned. I believe that we're also going to have a chat about our community section. I think we got our first community bat wrap up, which was very good. Well done, boys. I think Kyle is going to live on air pronounce their names because they're Scandinavian. So that'll be cool. That'll be funny.
Swedish.
Yeah. Swedish. Northerners. They're Northmen up there in the cold north. So yeah, so it's exciting. We'll and then whatever else happens. Yeah. So let's do it. Let's get into it. Things that I learned, Kyle. Things that I learned. I did learn some things after a 3-month hiatus.
Hold on.
Learned that games.
Before you get there.
Yep.
So everybody wants to know. Okay, so this is out there. This is for the viewers and listeners. How much muscle mass have you put on in 3 months, and can you still hold a paintbrush without snapping it like a twig?
Well. Actually, I have been working it. So when did Emma? So we'll have to go right back to February last year. So I lost my dad February last year, and I started to drink more than normal, if that's possible. And really let myself go. Really kind of got depressed as I was doing some painting. I was doing some podcasting, but never really got off the ground. as far as the old me was concerned. So I was moping around in June of last year because that was Dad's birthday. And Emma said to me, why don't you go back to lifting weights? Because that was when she thought I was like most happy and stuff. And, I was getting out, like hitting the gym, going home. I get a little bit of insomnia, so I was painting all night. And that was, really, really kind of what I was doing. I was getting the swing of it. So I said, probably a good idea. So then June, July last year, I went back to the gym and started doing my thing. So that was good. But what I was also doing was I was trying to lose some weight, so I wasn't eating much. So I wasn't really making any gains, and I wasn't doing enough cardio to kind of get anywhere, like body sculpting wise. So then I decided we'll stuff it. So I started eating smoked salmon and salami and steak and all the chicken I could find. Every chicken in this effing place, as the hound would say. And I think I've put on about 8 kilos of muscle in a year, maybe. Oh no, because it's a fair bit. I've put on about 8 kilos, but a fair bit out to be fat as well. But I think it's very hard to judge because I kind of yo-yoed there for a while. But I've definitely changed shape. My clothes still fit. So look, I've gained 8 kilos, and some of that's muscle and fat. So there you go.
So for everybody out there who doesn't know how much a kilo is, that's about 17 and a half pounds.
Yeah, over a year. Yeah. Or June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So over 9 months, which isn't too bad. Like better kilo a month. It's up there. And for everyone asking and wondering, I'm using SARMs, and have been known to do the odd peptide. So that's kind of it because I'm 37. I'm getting old. I need some help. So.
And can you still hold a paintbrush? Like, do you still have full range of motion in your arms?
Yes, I do, and that'll be addressed shortly when I talk about getting back into painting. But yes, I do have full range of motion. But funnily enough, when I was doing biceps and shoulders, and I was painting like models and stuff, I found that when I was like, how you kind of prop your hands against each other so your hands don't shake, and you're doing your painting. I found that the lactic acid was building up in my arms so badly, I had to hunch over and sit my arms on the desk. So that was something that never happened before.
Yeah, I don't have that problem.
Yeah. Well, I didn't either until quite recently.
All right.
So that was something to think about for you guys that are going to get out there and start pushing weight.
So now that we got that out of the way, so you get back from this extended holiday.
Which by the way, once again, issues with my father. So it was the first Christmas without Dad, and so then that was pretty crap. And then not too long after that, it was the anniversary of his death. So I just ended up like just going to the gym and drinking rum pretty much straight. So that was my extended hiatus. And so I managed to drag my ass out of the bottle of rum, and so now I'm back amongst the land of the living.
And so now that you are back to the hobby, let's talk. What have you learned? Let's start there.
Okay. I've learned for a start, extended hiatuses, drinking rum, and doing lots of gym work probably isn't the way to go for a healthy lifestyle because my kidneys are absolutely killing me. My kidney count was looking really bad. So no more alcohol for me, and probably got to lay off the SARMs too, and kind of cut back on the protein and protein shakes. That's a tip for young players. So that's one thing I learned. The hobby-wise, right, things I've learned is, one, Games Workshop paints will dry out as soon as you look away. I'm pretty sure as soon as you look away from the pot, they go dry.
Yeah.
Two, when you're like me and do and have done a lot of painting and you have a lot of paints that you kind of dip into, reseal, the cost of looking away from those is quite high. So then you've got to take a few $100 to go and get more. Having a small child and really beautiful Kolinsky brushes don't mix well together, because when you go back for your Kalinskis, they've either been chewed on, slobbered on, torn out, or splayed apart. So that was another issue.
Good Lord.
Yeah, yep. Oh, and pressure packs. So my black. So I thought that these pressure packs usually stay on the shelves for a fairly long time. It should be all right. But no, when I went to undercoat with some Chaos Black, I shook the absolute living crap out of it. Shook. Sprayed, and it still came out watery. And I'm just going, what is with this crap? So basically, I had to scrap every paint item I had and go and get new stuff. And that was painful.
Oh my God, that's an expensive trip to the store.
It really was. Having said that, the guy at Games Workshop was happy to see me.
I'm sure.
I dropped like $500. So then he was more than happy. I'm like, yeah, if you had square bases, mate, you'd be up for another 300 as well. But because you don't, screw you, piece them out. So that'll be a trip back to basics. But,
so did you restock complete with GW paints, or did you buy anything else?
Oh, mate, I'm a Puritan. I'm an absolute purist. I can't help it. I did restock 110% with, honest to God, GW paints. Because the funny thing was, the Vallejo ones that I've got didn't go dry.
Well, it's funny how that works. It's almost like GW is trying to, get you to buy new paint.
Oh, well, I'm sure 100% that they've got little cameras in them, and as soon as you look away, mate, if they start blowing on them, it's like all the execs go on your paints. Just try them right out. I'm positive. So yes, that had to get some more green stuff. All my inks. Actually, it's funny. I'd left my my bag of paints like that I take between work and home in the car over summer, and the inks appear to have boiled,
evaporated,
gone up the sides, crawled their way out of the sealed containers, and in this old bag that I used to have, it was just covered on the bottom with ink, where the ink has literally travelled up the side of the container and bubbled out. It was something else. It really was.
That is crazy.
Yeah. So Games Workshop saw me coming. They love it. So then, of course, they've got their import tax on top of that. So it really hurt. I'm still walking like a duck. It really, really, really hurt. But we're back on board. We've got models on the table. We've got pigment on brushes. It's really good. So far, I have done a little bit with some more of Dave's elves. I've also come upon a bunch of demons that my lovely missus okayed and was like, hey, do you want these? Here you go, have them, because I'm so glad you're back into the hobby, which was fantastic. Shout out to her. Thanks, babe. So those demons, though, I need to get about, 300 of square bases of varying sizes. I think I've got a bunch of screamers, bunch of horrors, like a lot of horrors, bunch of bloodletters, some juggernauts, a couple of chariots. Yeah, heaps, honestly.
Now, so was this like an Age of Sigmar army that you're converting back to square bases, or is it a 40k army, or what?
40k, I believe, and the reason I believe is because the demon prince that came with the army has a power sword. So, or whatever the hell demons have in 40k. I was like, should I leave it? Shouldn't I? It looks pretty cool, but no, I don't. So I reckon I'll end up tearing it apart and give him something else.
I've got the perfect thing. You need to green stuff a French baguette.
No, honestly, now this is serious, honest to God, and I'm going to say it right here, right now. I really, really want to make up just a unit of 15 executioners, all with baguettes. I'm not sure whether the SquareHammer community know where that's coming from, but basically on this other podcast I do from time to time, I got really pissed one day. I got really drunk and was on just drunk out of my head, and I was slurring my words, and everyone knows that my personal favorite character is Talaris Threadbringer, but I was so off my chops that I slurred out how much I love Talaris Breadbringer. So I just got inundated with memes of executioners wielding French breadsticks, and I've never lived it down. So that's So I want to model up just a unit of 15 all with breadsticks.
I think it's a great idea.
I do too. I think it's great, and I think enough of the community's heard it and knows enough of it now to get a kick out of it. And if they don't, they will.
Yeah, no kidding. So what all have you been working on? You said you were working on Davo's Wood Elves.
Yes, sorry.
And
The Wood Elves has been a bit of a labour of love. Like last year really was difficult to get through, and Davo has been amazing. Like he's probably one of my best friends here in Australia. I've never even met the guy because we live so far apart. But my goal was to have it done by my birthday, which is in September. But then the wheels fell off, and I've only got I think 4 units of 5 cav to go. So 10 Wild Riders, 10 Sisters. I've got I think a unit of infantry and some characters to go. Like not much at all. When you know how fast I paint, not much at all. But it's just been the difficulty in the last half of the year. So the Sisters have all been put together. They've all been cleaned, glued. Their mounts have been put together, cleaned and glued. And I've also been doing little bits on some of the other not Deepwood Scouts. He wants Glade Guard, yeah. So I've been doing a bit on the Glade Guard, so cleaning them up, and I've got a bit of pigment on them so far. And then also, getting through these demons, kind of doing a stock take, what's there, how many bases I need, things like that. And then a mate of mine, he wanted a bunch of Drucchi made up, painted up for something that he was doing. And so because Drucchi is the bread and butter and I get through them really easy, I basically just did them with my eyes closed and pumped out 50 of them, 60 of them, I think, in a week.
Was that another Talaris Breadbringer reference?
Yeah, it could be. Well, we try and get Talaris in there as much as we can.
Well, I mean, you don't just have a conversation about French baguettes and then work in a bread and butter pun. I mean, tell me I'm not the only one who heard that.
I was going to say, you called me far too quick. I was going to say if anyone listening called us out on the website, on the Facebook. So you go, you heard it here first, guys. Kyle got it first. You don't get the trophy. You don't get the cookie. Sucked in. Yeah, Kyle, have a cookie.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take my cookie.
There you go. So yes, so really behind the scenes, and the thing is, most people know that I self-aggrandize terribly and shamelessly, and I love my own work. Usually I would put it up on Instagram and Facebook, but once again, just haven't been in the mindset to do it. So prepare yourselves for a veritable tsunami. So then after Davo's Elves, I have a fairly large project that I've got to get done because when the announcement for the Old World came out, scant hours before, because I thought it couldn't possibly be the Old World coming out, I made a boast, and it was a fairly big boast.
You sure did, didn't you?
Yeah. So what I basically said, paraphrasing, I think because I swore a lot in it as well, because I might have been drinking. I don't know. I think I was. I said that I would paint 10k of High Elves in the nude with pictures if we got our game back, if we got the Old World, thinking that we wouldn't, thinking Games Workshop couldn't possibly be bringing it back. And a couple of hours later, boom, the announcement was dropped. Old World coming back, Square Bases coming back.
So 10,000 points. That's a lot.
Yes. It is a lot. Well, look, it's elves, so it's not that much really. Like elves are hefty. Elves are hefty in points. I've got a lot of high elves, lots and lots. Lots of cav. But I want it to be a proper army, not like 10k of dragons or something like that. It's going to be a good mix of infantry and cavalry and monsters. if anyone's seen my posts of my Dark Elves, it's going to be something similar to that, because I want eventually to have both armies, 15k, facing off over a really nicely done board, and that's my kind of goal for those two armies.
Yeah.
So look, I did my Dark Elves in a year, I think. I did at least 12k of those in a year. So 10k of High Elves. High Elves, they require a little bit more finesse than Dark Elves. Dark Elves are very forgiving in that you're working with darker colours, very rich, warm tones, lend themselves very well to, shading with inks and things like that. High Elves, not quite as much. If you want to get the same standard of painting, you've got to be highlighting with paint a lot more, very sparing on the washes, and kind of take a little bit more time. So I think the High Elves will take around about the same time, but I'm going to have to knuckle down really hard on them, I think.
Are you? Yeah. I mean, especially if you're doing the, white and blue box art colors.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I've done with Dark Elves. Like, it's all box art. It's all very standard, very Nagrothy.
Yeah.
Despite being from Hageneth, my particular love for Hageneth. But yeah, and I think it will be. I may add a couple of elite units from Crace and things like that, like with their colours. But as a general rule, it's going to be white and blue. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know that there may be some people on our Facebook group who constantly berate you for pictures of these, work in progress High Elves.
The thing is, I didn't actually say when I was starting. I said I will do it, but I think I even said I've got some things to get rid of first. So I bought myself a little bit of time. But yes, it's definitely coming. I'm definitely nuding up. It's definitely happening. So stay tuned, and when I get through Dave's stuff, and we'll make a start.
So when can people expect the delivery date of these High Elves?
I'm not sure.
I mean, is this like a by the end of calendar year 2020 thing?
Oh no, far long before then. Just got to basically get Davo stuff done and get the aircon fixed in our house so it's nice and warm, and I'll make a start.
All right. Well, folks, you heard it here first. High Elves are coming. Very.
I got that pun.
And not only that, Renee's going to try and walk through the flames of Assyrian and see if he comes out on the other side. So,
Kyle, tell us about our latest bat rep, because it's not you and Blue. You and Blue were absent for this bat rep. There was no Bluestone 42 or Kyle the Wall Puncher. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, none of that happened.
There was no.
So, SquareHammer just rolled out what we're calling the Community Bat Rep series. Long story short, if you want to create some videos and get put on the internet and share some content with other people who want to be part of the fantasy, renaissance, so to speak, or just have been part of the fantasy culture for years and years.
Or if you want to film some stuff, like I'm going to be filming some stuff, and you want to be part of someone else's fantasy, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. So if you want to be part of it and you want to film some content to be on our YouTube channel, all we're asking is that you play a game. It doesn't have to be fully painted. Just put some models on the table, create a narrative, and basically film an introduction, a recap after each turn, and some type of game summary or outro at the end. And then you send me the files. I'll upload it all together, and we'll put it up on the channel so that people can see it. We just put up our first one. It's a High Elf versus Dwarf game. That was put together by Daniel Stjernloff and Nicholas Tennerholm Lundberg. I have no idea if I'm saying
great.
that
That
right.
was good.
Yeah,
did that
Did that sound legitimate? Like I'm partially Swedish?
Mate, I thought you were all Swedish.
Yeah.
I was getting my
So,
Norseman chills going on there.
so
I was like, quick, ready the barracks, the Vikings are coming.
so Daniel's last name is spelled Stjernlof, and I was totally fine with the Stjern, and then I got to the O with an umlaut over it, and then I panicked.
Sterenjulf. Sterenjulf? My name is Sterenjulf. Yes. Hey, look, I think you got a lot closer than I did, but yes.
Maybe.
From now on, he shall be named Ragnarsson.
Sure.
That's the one I can pronounce.
So go check out that video. It
is very good.
They're probably, I don't know. None of them I can't imagine will be much longer than 10 minutes. It's like a super condensed bat rep. And it's just
it's all in Swedish.
But the idea is just to get fantasy bat reps out there in a condensed format that hopefully people will enjoy and watch. And then if you want to be part of it, just send me or Blue or Brene or David a PM on Facebook, and we'll get you squared away with how to submit the files, and you too can be famous on YouTube.
Absolutely. If you want, I can do an Australian voiceover. I can do an Australian. I can put some Australianisms in there. I can talk about toilet paper battalions. Anything you want. I can translate. From English to Australian.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, I've got two guys that want to record. I don't know whether it's a YouTubey thing or a podcasty thing, but they're both from England. And I was giving them some guff about the Queen's English and saying how my Queen's English is far superior to their Queen's English, so they want to have a Queen's English off. I think I might have bitten off a bit more than I can chew.
Does that mean that if it is a podcast recording that nobody is going to be able to understand what either of you are saying? I consider myself pretty fluent in English, and half the time I have no idea what you're saying anyway.
I think there's a really good possibility of that.
So, in other news, SquareHammer dice are here.
Yes.
They are awesome. We played our first game with them. What's today? Saturday. We played Thursday. They're great. If you order dice through Blue, make sure you've sent him your mailing address so that we can get them out to you. And the other thing is SquareHammer's going to Adepticon this year, which is the last week of March. Blue and I are driving out there on Tuesday night. We'll be there through most of the event and leaving on Sunday morning. So we expect to see some of you folks there. Come up, say hi, take pictures with us. We'll give you free autographs. We'll be the two guys wearing the SquareHammer shirts, probably. But absolutely looking forward to that. And
that'll be fantastic. You guys are so lucky getting to go.
It's the first time I've ever been. First time I've ever been to a major con event of any kind related to Warhammer. What I am most excited about is Adepticon put out this teaser like a month or so ago, maybe at this point. They said that this Adepticon is going to be the biggest reveal in Warhammer history. Woo! Whatever that means.
Wow.
So I know what I'm thinking.
Here I was thinking me being naked painting elves was a big reveal.
Or a little reveal.
Yes, you could be right.
But yeah, who knows what that's gonna be?
Hopefully it's got corners.
Right? Oh my God! Please give me corners. I want those hard 90-degree angles. I feel like I should be paying $5.99 to listen to you say that. $5.99 a minute, right?
That's it. Tell me
Yeah.
about corners again, Kyle. Tell me
Give,
about hard
give me those 90-degree angles. I don't want those radiuses. I don't. Keep your bananas. I want your door hinges.
Talk dirty, Kyle. Say radius again. Oh my God, I'm dying. Oh Jesus.
That'll be
Help me.
$5.99. You can pay me through PayPal.
Oh God, I'm dead.
So
Oh, I'm composed.
So that's kind of the SquareHammer news wrap up, and stay tuned for our next full length bat rep, which will be out probably tomorrow.
Who's that featuring?
That features what did you call him? Blue 2020 or whatever.
Bluestone 42.
There you go, Bluestone 42 and Kyle Wallpuncher.
Yes.
It's a 2,000 point game of dwarves versus orcs and goblins.
Nice. Ooh, this will be good. Who's running orcs and goblins?
Me.
Oh, nice. Kill the stunties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a learning game for both of us. Blue doesn't really have a lot of experience with dwarves, and I have zero experience with orcs and goblins. So it was a learning experience. We'll just say it
How
like
many
that.
mangler squeeze did you take?
One.
Oh, okay, so you lost.
But that one mangler squig did some work.
Yeah, it did some work. That's it. I find with the orcs and goblins list that your chances of winning increase exponentially with the amount of mangler squigs you take.
Mangler squigs and doom divers.
Yeah. Not saying that they're the only things that do any work, but they're really the only things that do any work.
Yeah. I think my biggest takeaway is, their leadership is terrible.
Oh,
it is
honestly
awful.
You have to take Black Orcs. There is, in 8th edition, there is very, very, very little you can do if you don't take Black Orcs, because I love Orcs and Goblins. They were my army before I got into Delves, and I tried so hard to run an army of Savage Orcs. I tried so hard because every tournament, they'd all be running Black Orc War Bosses, and I'm going, well, no, I don't want to be like everyone else. That sucks. But then after getting my bum handed to me so many times, just taking big bosses and savage bosses and war bosses and staying right away from the Black Orcs, I really, really do think that in 8th edition, the way it's structured with the animosity and all that kind of stuff and low leadership, you've got to be taking units of Black Orcs, and then you've got to be putting Black Orc war bosses in every unit that isn't a Black Orc,
Well,
it really is the only way to run them competitively.
Everyone is just going to have to wait and see the bat rep and see what happens.
Well, you only took one mangler squig, so I can tell you what happened.
Mangler squig goes on a 60mm round base, right?
I believe so. Having said that, though, I am so old school. I am so fantasy that I put everything that should be on a round base on a square base.
Oh my gosh!
Just because.
You really love those hard right angles. That'll be $5.99.
Say radius again.
Radius.
I need a cigarette. Yes, I do. I really love it. And all my artillery, everything, it's on square bases.
Yeah.
I even think my phonetics are on square bases.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's how square I am. Yeah.
Oh, you're so hip.
Square.
So let's move on, because that's pretty much all of our SquareHammer news and updates. So take us into this next section. What exactly do you want to talk about?
Well, this bit here we could fill hours and hours, but I wanted to touch on the idea of the sphere of influence. Now, this was a thing that was kind of a big thing back in 6th edition. prior to pre-measuring, things like that, but it still holds up today. The idea is each unit is capable of reaching out and touching someone, whether that's a charge, whether that's by shooting or, things like that. And depending on how far they can reach, what the strength is, what damage they're going to do, or the hindrance to the opposition, depending on those things, that is what denotes their sphere of influence. So something, for example, with a particularly large sphere of influence would be high elf archers, 30-inch range. They can reach out and touch something 30 inches away, which they can start putting pressure on the opposition from turn one. So when you're tactically looking at these archers, you've got to go, well, they're soft and squishy, but I'm going to take time to get there, and they're going to be shooting at me. So you pick your thing that's going to take those guys out wisely. You have something that's super tough, super armored, so that their small, tiny little insignificant arrows can't really hurt. By the time you get there, and by the time they are into your sphere of influence, you can go and smash them with, say for example, juggers of corn. Heavily armored, high toughness. As soon as they hit those guys, they're going to absolutely mince them, even if they've got two guys left. Take for example then river bolt throwers. Okay, so they've got a very, very long range. You can vary whether it's going to be one shot at strength 6 or 6 shots at strength 4. High priority target. Those guys can really reach out and mess your day up. So you've got to decide, right, how am I going to take that out? Maybe miners if you're dwarves, it may be anti-artillery fire, things like that. But you can put on those spheres of influence a number. So, for example, if you've got a long range with a high penetration, high damage value, that's a very high number. So say an 8, So then if you've got, say, your goblin short bows, for example, very, very, very short range, 16 range, strength 3, no armor penetration, that would be a much lower number. I mean, it wouldn't be as low as, say, a unit of hand-to-hand guys, like their sphere of influence is very small. Say goblin spearmen, for example, that'd be an even lower number because they've got such a low, insignificant range that, you kind of just ignore them. But you see what I'm saying. So based on that high number, you can kind of gauge, okay, well, I need to take that thing out very fast because that is capable of messing up my strategy. That is capable of taking out key elements in my army. And although we all know these things, although we all get there and we understand that cannons are bad for dragons, and we understand that high elf archers can reach out and touch someone from half a board away, we don't have that in our forebrain. I think we've all gotten there across the field of battle and gone, geez, how am I going to take that out? How am I going to take that out? We all start to get there and focus on the, the elite hammer units, or we focus on that hardcore spellcaster or something like that. When in fact, if we step back and we look at things with a much more tactical mindset and start giving things priorities based on numbers and how they can hurt us, how far it takes to hurt us, we can kind of start to notice a pattern in gameplay and our own gameplay. And we can modify our tactics around that. So, for example, if you've got a guy set up on the other side of the field from you, and he's got a bunch of shooting stuff, and they're all quite squishy, and he's got, so say dwarves, and he's got a bunch of slow-moving stuff, we all talk about, we can just run around them. But how often do we get there and panic and charge that unit of Ironbreakers because we don't want to get charged by them, If we step back and we start looking at spheres of influence and really think about it, we should be able to lead those guys around by the nose. If not lead them around by the nose, at least stay out of their way and do what we talk about doing away from the battlefield. I think everyone and his dog talks about slow-moving units of other armies and how they do this and how they do that. And then, unfortunately, on the day, you lose, and you go, geez, how did I lose? And it's getting distracted. It's looking at those hardcore characters and looking at those hardcore spellcasters, those elite units, and going, God, I've got to take that out, I've got to take that out. When in fact, you've got overlapping spheres of influence from a bunch of other units you're not taking any notice of, and they're what's causing the damage. What are your thoughts, Kyle?
That is a lot to unwrap.
It is.
That's my first thought. So, let me just make sure I'm understanding this right. So, let's just say you are playing somebody with 10 units.
Yep.
Right? There's 10 units on their side of the field. You're going to assign a priority level, effectively,
Yep.
to your high threats.
Yep.
Based
on how far they can reach out and disrupt your plans.
Okay. So obviously the biggest thing that you need to take into account is your deployment.
Yep.
Right? Because you don't want to, in a lot of ways, Warhammer's like rock, paper, scissors, right? You don't want to put, your lightly armored foot troops in front of an organ, yeah, or high elf archers for that matter.
Exactly.
And you don't want to put your heavily armored cavalry in front of a war machine or in front of great weapon foot troops that are 30 deep. Okay, so I'm with you there.
Yep. So then you're going to have to also look at, okay, these guys can fire 30 inches, but they can also turn and move 6 inches. So that means that in turn 2, they can have moved in that first instance, and their sphere of influence could be back to 24 inches, but then by turn 3, it's moved, so now it's overlapping a bunch of stuff I didn't want it to overlap. So that's something else to take into consideration, because that turn 2, they won't move. They'll be back up to their 30 inches, and then, bang, they've started to pepper your elite soft squad of rangers or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. I know that something I struggle with and always have is my deployment. Like, I think I come into a game with a game plan, and I'm really rigid about adjusting that game plan based on my opponent's deployment, and sometimes that works for me, and sometimes more often than not it bites me.
I think it would be interesting if you watched back over your games that you've recorded that you've lost, and you look at you look at it from that sphere of influence kind of mindset and go, okay, I ignored those things, yet they did a lot of work. They really reached out, they peppered my units, or they forced me to walk over to a side I didn't want to walk over to, and really see whether the games you won because you prioritized the right targets, or they themselves didn't look at the correct sphere of influence and the correct threat level, and things like that. Because I think most games are won and lost like that. And you and Blue have the luxury of recording so many games, getting them out there. You have the luxury of being able to look back over it and go, well, that is where I went wrong. Like, that unit there, it seemed insignificant at the time, but gee, it racked up a lot of kills. Or that unit there seemed like a real high threat, and as I was marching over to get that high threat, I was copping flack from these 3 units that were quite infinitesimal, but were so far away I couldn't do anything. But they reached out and they started picking me off. Things like that, Yeah, and I think it's a good idea. Even if you guys aren't going to upload your games, record them so you can watch back over it, like any game, like a game of gridiron, like a boxing match, like an MMA match. Record your games and watch back over them, boys. See where you went wrong, see what happened, and then change accordingly next time.
I know that because I do the video editing for most of our games, I feel like I've watched all of our bat reps about 12 times, for better or for worse. One of those things you catch is rule mistakes from time to time, but you really get a appreciation for how many little things you can do better that could change the outcome of a game. Or you're retroactively looking at something and you're trying to figure out why you did something, because when you see it, you know, after the fact, you realize it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah. And so
Um,
you're going, why on earth did I walk in front of those blood crushers? Like, stuff like that. Why did I let that massive Death Star of Helibron, Talaris, a Cauldron, and a bunch of executioners charge into my main unit? Why did I let that happen?
yeah, yeah. So let's put this sphere of influence um, into practice. So let's uh, let's pick a bat rep. Um,
Well, say I really thought. You remember when you were using the beasts versus wood elves, right?
sure. Yeah, that's a great one.
Perfect one, because you've got pig missiles. Now,
Hmm.
on the surface, their sphere of influence, they're a close combat unit. They can't reach out and touch anyone via shooting, but they have a gorgeous charge range, and they act very, very well on the charge. So
Yep.
their sphere of influence is quite wide. It's quite big. It's quite long. Um, Unfortunately, the wood elves, they're all about maximising that sphere of influence. You get yourself some Way Watchers, for example. Oh my God! So those guys shoot at 30 inches. They're almost all going to hit. Yes, they're not as strong as like black powder weapons and things like that. But the fact is, they're putting rounds on target. Pretty much, you can guarantee at least 80% is going to do something, going to hit. That adds up over a long time. And if you've got them and everyone else firing at the same thing, you may only assign, since they're a strength 3 bow, you may assign, based on the fact that they're going to be hitting you more times than not, you may assign a 6 or a 7 to their sphere of influence. That by itself isn't terrible because there's only 10 of them, but when you get there with the Deepwood Scouts and the Glade Guard, and they're all firing at your one unit of squishy gores that have very little armor, then you've got a problem. If you've got overlapping spheres of influence all over the same unit, that is a high risk area. You don't want 4 different guys, so 40 men, 40 elves, all shooting at the same squishy target, because you're going to have a very, very, very bad day.
Look here, Sun Tzu, or Sun Tzu, or whoever wrote The Art of War.
Yeah, yep. Sunny
Uh,
boy.
are you trying to tell me that I may have screwed up my target priority in that game?
Not really. No, I wouldn't say that. I think it's just things to watch out for. It's because when you're playing beasts and coming up against wood elves, you don't have a lot of armor. You don't have a lot of armor at all. And I can't, off the top of my head, remember every tactical decision that you made in that game. I just remember that you got shot with a lot of arrows. But for a matchup like that, whereby you're on the back foot because you don't have a lot of armor, and the guys that you're facing are incredibly quick, they have a very long, long, long sphere of influence that they can reach out and touch you. If you end up getting ganged up on by a couple of units, you will find your units getting deleted very, very, very quickly. And I know that's something that we all know, but I don't think it's something that we all pay enough attention to. Conversely, those pig missiles, people don't give them enough credit. I don't think people don't get there and think, oh, it's one pig. Like I'll shoot it to hell. People use them as redirectors, when really if you have a herd of those pigs, they are going to do some work for you. They are going to be your version of Mangler Squigs. They're very strong on the charge. They've got a very long charge range. They're angry pork missiles. They're brilliant. I really rate them. There was one unit though, Kyle, that as soon as you put it down, I thought, no, bad area, don't do it. And I think it might have been your Centigores. Did they get taken out fairly quick?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was more of that gang up targeting, wasn't it?
Yeah, they fell victim to poison arrows. and then panicked off the board. First turn.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yes. So
Yep.
putting them down there it wasn't overly brilliant. It was a bugger because Centaurs, they can do a lot of work themselves, but the problem is they are medium cav. They're not light cav. They don't get all the good bonuses that light cav have. They're not heavy cav. They're not heavily armored. They are a medium cavalry regiment, and medium cav in the art of Warhammer is a very, very difficult unit to use. I do remember the old Griffin Legion. I think they were the epitome of medium cavalry. They weren't heavily armored. They didn't get all the buffs from a light cav unit, but what they did have was fear on the charge. And back in 6th, that was a big deal. Fear was brilliant, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, though, any medium cavalry that have survived from 6th to 8th, I think are on the back foot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. They have very little. There's not really a role that medium cavalry do that a lot of other things don't.
Yeah, not anymore. It did in 6th. There definitely was a place for them in 6th, but now, given 8th, they just, I guess they're the cavalry you take when you don't have enough points for cavalry, really. You've got to kind of keep them back. You've got to keep them with a low priority target, and then about turn 3 or 4, once everyone's engaged, use them as flankers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Blue made a very good tactical decision to shoot those guys, because if you'd got them up into a flank and they were drunk, say, and they were doing a lot more damage, I think they could have turned the game. I think it was very unfortunate they fled off.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing, getting in the sphere of influence idea is we all kind of use it when we're using our leadership for our general and our battle standard bearer. Everyone gets that. Everyone understands and knows that. All we're doing with this tactica, I guess you would say, is trying to get everyone to then use that same rationale for other units. And when you think of it like that, it's a lot easier to kind of digest.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you probably kind of feel down in your gut.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily always think about it the same way you think about your BSB or reroll range or your general's leadership bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could all benefit from understanding and appreciating what everybody's sphere of influence is on the table.
Yeah, and knowing the warning signs, going, okay, well, there's three different units, all kind of angled to overlap in this area, and here's my high damage unit, and they're starting to get deleted because there's so many arrows or so many rounds or so many magic missiles coming at them. How did I let this happen? And it was because we're looking at those 10 Glade Guard and going, oh well, it's only Glade Guard. But what we're missing is the other 40 Glade Guard that are all overlapping that area, and all of a sudden your elite units start getting deleted.
Yeah.
So the things like, if you've got a fire mage, that's obviously a high priority target because he can start throwing fireballs like no one's business. And I think we all know that. So why don't we kind of look at that and put the idea of the fireball throwing fire mage onto other units, and then look at their imaginary sphere on the board and say, okay, what overlaps, and then act accordingly.
Makes
so
sense.
Then you can also disrupt spheres of influence by, okay, well there's these 10 guys here, these 10 guys here, they're all overlapping, so let's send a flanking force of Dark Riders up the edge to start putting some pressure on these the back line, so they're not all pointing at the same unit. They'll have to turn around and shoot at them, and so all of a sudden that elite unit was copying all the flak. A little bit of heat's off because you've sent your Dark Riders up to muck up their formation a bit. Things like that. And of course, it's not an exact science. I mean, there's going to be things you miss, but I think the more you really have it in your forebrain, the more you really think about those spheres of influence, the more you really think about those overlapping arcs of fire and overlapping charges as well. The more you think about okay, well, that thing charges a fair way, that thing charges a fair way, they could possibly both get me this turn. The more you think about that in your forebrain rather than feel it in your gut, I think is tactically a really, really good move. And I think the best players on the tournament scene, whether they have a very, very good gut feeling for this, or whether they apply those lessons because they remember the days of sixth and things, I think they're the ones that really understand this. They don't just look at the BSB and go, okay, well, I've got to be within 12 of this guy to get what's good. How about I've got to be out of 24 of those guys to make sure I don't get what's bad.
Oh, is a lot of that because back in sixth, everything had much more of a defined sphere of influence?
Yeah,
like
because
you didn't have random charges, and you couldn't pre-measure.
Yeah, correct. And things like a lot of your light cav and your characters and stuff, they all had 360-degree movement and shooting as well.
Mm-hmm.
It did. Now this is a big holdover from sixth. This is the tactical knowledge from sixth is a holdover to eighth, and it isn't quite the same. But I truly believe that we can still learn a lot from it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's, Blue does a really good job of that.
He does. I'm not sure whether he kind of says it, talks about the same as we are now, but I think he does apply those same lessons.
I mean, he is much more experienced. He is a much more experienced player than me. That's for sure. And I think more often than not, he chooses the correct target priorities and understands, what the threat ranges are much better than I do. And as I play more and more and more, I'll learn. Hopefully.
Well, I'm pretty sure you've given me a couple of good smackings. You've given me a couple of really good bloody noses.
I have. But I think more often than not, when we get down into a really tactical game, he usually comes out on top.
Yeah, he usually takes more mangler squigs than you, I think. That's the general consensus. All of a sudden, all the Orcs and Goblin players that are watching the bat reps are going, "No, Kyle, why did you only take one?"
I know. Well, the answer is because I only have one painted.
Oh, well, there you go, guys. You heard it here first. Lost because he hadn't painted enough.
I know.
That's something we can take away, guys. Paint.
That's right. Apparently, painting 3,000 points at Orcs in 2.5 months wasn't enough. I needed 3,500 points.
Yes, knuckle down, Kyle.
I know. Jesus, I know. All right. Well, what else you got? Anything else related to spheres of influence?
I don't think so. I think that's a lot of. I don't even know if I was cohesive for most of that, but I think that's enough info for now. I would like to revisit it and talk about things like charging, feints, and things like that. Using that hardcore, nasty-looking unit of executioners with their sphere of influence, with their threat priority, to kind of move an entire battle line, things like that, just to put pressure on the other guy and get him to make those mistakes of moving his elite unit towards them through the overlapping sphere of influence of a bunch of my dark shards. But that's getting right into it, and that I think right now with what we've talked about, because we're actually sitting on like an hour 16 right now, with what we've talked about this episode, I think that we've done enough, and we'll come back to that stuff later, I think.
Okay. Well, all right. So if there's a question in your mind about whether or not you are cohesive, summarize it in 4 sentences. Just end the show with that. Summarize.
About look at your enemy. Look at how far each of his units can either move, attack, or shoot. Assign prioritization on what they'll do to your guys based on that priority, and be mindful of those spheres overlapping, because the threat level will go up exponentially.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good, man.
Thanks.
That being said, I would assign a priority level of like 2 to a group of Talaris executioners. They are like such a low priority for me.
Until they come and start slicing into pieces.
They can just take those bread knives and put them back in the kitchen.
And just make you a sandwich.
That's well.
See,
What?
the other thing is, and this is, once again, we'll get into it later on. Like those executioners, and you're absolutely right. Low threat, although if they get their hands on you, you're dead. But for the first opening moves, they're a low threat because they can't do anything to you until, of course, you work out that the Dark Elf player across from you, is using the Law of Light. All of a sudden, they're 3/4 of the way across the board, and they can charge your turn 2. And you go, what the hell happened?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like using the speed of light, magic, and stuff like that. So that's going to be something we talk about later on, where, okay, it's your magic phase, turn 1. You've assigned a tiny priority to Laris and his boys because they're so far away. But all of a sudden, you find out that the guy's a light mage, and now you've got to work out which spells you're going to stop. And that particular spell he's going to cast is going to have those guys moving up to within charge range turn 2. What do I do? So that all of a sudden their threat level goes up.
Yeah, I can see that being a problem.
Yeah, that's for another time, and that's some hardcore, extreme, advanced stuff. So for now, though, kind of apply it to shooting, apply it unit by unit. Don't worry about magic, and just see how your games go, guys. Till we touch on it again. You know, you might find that taking that little bit extra time, thinking about target priorities, thinking about that overlapping arcs of fire and that sphere of influence may help your games. Or you could go, wow, that is the biggest load of bunkum I've ever heard. This drunk Aussie has no idea. Get your ass back in the gym, snort some iron filings, and shut up. I don't know, but hopefully some old school wisdom still holds up.
Yeah, actual results may vary.
Yeah, that's it.
There's your Renee. There's your Renee disclaimer.
Yeah. Solid. So yeah, that's it. That's cool.
All right. So how do you want to wrap up the show?
I think just that it's good being back. It's good being back on the wagon. Good hobbying again. Good talking to you again, Kyle.
Absolutely.
Good talking to listeners / viewers. Now I know a lot of the viewers, I don't know whether they've listened to our podcasts or not on the cast webs or on the YouTubes, but generally I'm more of a podcaster than getting in front of the camera. Having said that, the Dark Queen Emma is going to be doing a few little pieces on movement and shooting and just introductory Warhammer stuff. So I'll be filming that, so you can look for that. I don't know if I'll get in front of the camera. I might. That's how I go.
So is this going to be like you kind of doing a how-to?
Pretty much.
A basic intro to the game. This is how you read a characteristic chart, and this is what it all means, and this is how far you move, and that type of stuff.
Em really enjoys playing with me, but she is much more AOS based because it's so much simpler. You know, she can pick it up. It's four sheets, and all the rules are there on these cards that they've got, right? But she has expressed wanting to, because she loves the lore and the stories and the big personalities of fantasy. And so
Mm-hmm.
she said a really cool way for her to start getting across it would be to film a bunch of stuff for Square and film some intro. This is how, that's how, kind of tactical bits and pieces. And I said, that sounds great. That's fantastic. So that's something that we're going to be starting recording very soon. So still, still SquareHammer, still the same intro, still that good stuff. It's just Australian accents.
So when is this something we can expect in the next month or so?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, yep.
Awesome.
She's very keen to do it. Our biggest problem is, guys, we've got about 40 children because I'm basically like Goros, and I like to drink and sire young, and so we got to kind of wait until the kids are in bed till we do all this stuff. So yeah.
Well, I hope you're not siring young with your kids still awake.
Well, exactly. So we've got to put the kids to bed. I've got to sire some more young, and then we've got to record. See, that's how this stuff works.
Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely. It's good to have you back and hear your voice, and I'm sure
good
that
to be back, good to be heard.
Yeah.
And thank you, listeners, for enjoying Square and enjoying the bat reps and the bits and pieces we put out there.
That's right. We do it all for y'all.
Square is a labour of love. Square is really four guys that come together wanting content, wanting regular content, and wanting to put that out there for you guys, and ourselves as well, let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's not all altruistic.
Yeah.
We enjoy content even if we have to make it.
That's right. It's a show out there for everybody who loves hard right angles. That'll be $5.99. PayPal or Venmo. All right.
Except Bitcoin.
I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.
Catch you, boys.